this trip, I think, than you did last year. This is going to be a little bit more of history and architecture, and you'll see how it ties in with development. But we are here at the single largest development project in the state. We are very excited about what it is going to do for the entire region and the economy. And it will perhaps be the center of the South Shore's cultural economy as it becomes a major site for filming movies. They just finished with Ghostbusters 3 and other movies potentially lining up, and we'll see what could become the film studio. But to give you a perspective of what we're seeing, I'd like to introduce Matt Barry from L-Star. Matt has been living this project and driving it now for what, 3 years?
2 years.
2 years. But it is a great project, and Matt has been a great partner with the Chamber, and we're so excited about what is going to happen here. So to let you see what we're driving around, let me introduce Matt.
So Southfield, as many of you know, large project, used to be the Navy base, has gone through several iterations, several developers. We're happy to be the third developer. As you know, in the industry, the third developer is the one who's most successful. So we're hoping to be that developer. We started at the Shea Gym. The Shea Gym, as we'll come back around to at the very end of your tour, has the Navy Museum in it. The Navy Museum is an important part of the project. You'll get a chance to see the documentary that we premiered about a week ago. And when we first took over the project, we were doing before videos. So as we were doing the before videos, the videographer told us we had such an amazing history here. We should really take advantage of that, take advantage of the Navy Museum and maybe capture some of that history. And so they were authorized to kind of take off with it, and hopefully you're as impressed. I had no involvement with it, so I can heap praise on the team that pulled it together, because it's a pretty exciting part of history. We're happy to capture that history as we hopefully change it over the next 5 to 10 years. So our first challenge was to look at the project and try to understand why for 20 years it had not been successful and how we could be different. Certainly the Chamber's support over the last 2 years to change the legislation was critical to that. As you all know, the government entity, the development oversight has been changed entirely. And so that allowed the opportunity to revisit the layout. Where we were at the Shea Gym, the area that you've driven around and the area we're coming in from right now was originally envisioned and zoned to be the commercial space. So the existing entitlements at Southfield are 2,855 residential units, of which about 400 are occupied. We'll drive through the neighborhood right now and show you that. There's probably about 500 new home starts that have started this year, and we're going to work with the town of Weymouth to rezone it. So as you drive in this direction, I work a lot on feel, not only the analysis of commercial space and the analysis of the land value, but how it feels. And so if we were here walking and riding bikes, this is a beautiful residential entrance and has all of the old growth trees. This is where the Navy lived. This is where their barracks were and the homes were. And so we just don't see this as being a commercial space. I've been a commercial developer for 20 plus years, and trees and changes in elevation aren't important to commercial developers. They're important to residential developers. So our first request of Weymouth was to consider changing this land from the commercial campus to a residential campus. And so as you drive by, we really think homes fit better here. They fit because you have White Street just out where we turned. Those are all single family homes. We have single family neighborhoods that we want to mesh back into and allow what we're doing here to fit better with the community that surrounds us. And so we've made the request of Weymouth. We're in the process working with their planning department, the town council, and the mayor to talk about whether this land is better used for residential development. As we come down here, you can kind of see out your left side some of the improvements we've done. Southfield's supposed to be a big recreational component, regional recreational fields. A lot of what we've done here is really just take advantage of what the Navy left behind. The shade structure existed, the children's playground we put in, the dog park we put in, the soccer field that we'll drive by from the other side, this gymnasium. These all existed, and the previous developers just didn't let the towns use them. So we've spent the time and effort to refurbish them and open them up for free. So all 3 towns right now, their rec departments have the ability to use them. We'll be pulling up to the hangar and talking about that story in a few minutes. This is our existing neighborhood up here that we'll just take a quick drive through. Many people say they didn't even know we had started. Somehow with 400 residences, 600 residents, and 550 home starts, we don't seem to be able to make a dent in people's consciousness of the size of the project. What we're hoping to do is very urban. A lot of the South Shore is very suburban, very much your standard prototypical neighborhood. Yeah, I would have them turn like all the way at the end and come back again. But we would like to do kind of a more urban environment, a little bit more dense. These are townhomes. Everything you see as we're passing in this direction is owned. It's already been sold. Whitman Homes developed a lot of this. We also have apartments with Corcoran Apartments. So we have these very important refined green spaces, as well as the benefit of 1,000 acres of open space. And so as we ask our residents to consider, a much more urban feel, a much more closely dense population, we're also providing these important green spaces and very important unchanged natural habitats. So this is Faring Way. Faring Way is an age-restricted development, Rogerson Communities and Rice Eventide from Quincy. But as you see out back, this view will go away. You'll have to live there to see it, but that will be unchanged. So the views from the back of a 221 unit development will be unchanged. You have these views of these great wide open spaces. We have been able to work with Natural Heritage, the Concom commissions, Rockland Open Space, through a process where we'll be able to open 10 miles of trails in the next couple of months. We thought it'd be easy. So one of the first things I walked with the owner of L-Star, Kyle Corcoran, and said, what can we do to change the impression? And pretty straightforward. Maybe take down the 8-foot tall barbed wire topped fences. That sounds like a great idea. And so we said, let's just go start taking fences down. And then someone said, well, you might want to think about, the neighbors, the coyotes. You might want to ask the town's permission. Oh, by the way, the National Park System owns some of these fences. You might want to go talk to them. So sometimes we call this the domino project. I occasionally call it rabbit hole. Everything you talk about, you just drop down into a rabbit hole and disappear for a while. Yeah, go right. We'll take them out to the South Weymouth commuter rail station. So we, for 4 months, have been working to just open these trails, but we have now permission from the national parks, Natural Heritage, the Concom commissions, and the SRA to open 10 miles of trails, and we've started that process, and within the next couple of months should be announcing trail systems. We have plans and designs to grow these trails to 50 miles. So if you like biking, you like mountain biking, you like coming and walking, there's some areas out in the preserved lands that you don't feel like you're in Massachusetts anymore. There's some pine stands and ponds that we own that will be unchanged, just open access to everybody from the communities to come and use, and we really hope to be a place people come and think of for that kind of recreation. This is a Pulte project that just started, 200 condominiums that will be built over the next 2 years. And up here we have the South Weymouth commuter rail station. This is one of the biggest benefits of the project, is this, to have this on site. So we have, and have counted, we thought about 15% of our commuters would use the commuter rail. It's actually between 28 and 30%, depending on the day. And so we've been talking with the MBTA about, yeah, you can go in. That's all right, we own the land. But ignore all signs. We're also talking to the Coast Guard. What you see behind you is a buoy depot that services all the buoys from Nova Scotia to Key West. We think being closer to the ocean might be a better idea for them, and hopefully they'll find a way to do that. But this is the entrance. So we did a quick U-turn at one of our entrances. We drove down here to the commuter rail station. This is our second entrance. We'll be making our way out to the third entrance, and we'd like to, over time, have more entries. You know, we oftentimes, we're asked, what do you consider success? And sometimes I get in trouble for this answer, so I hope no one misinterprets it. But, you know, we think if the residents, the people who live in the neighborhoods that surround us, want to be in here, want access and the ability to come in more than they want to keep us out, that will be success. And so as we open these trails, as we have the various public events that we've started to have, we want to invite people in. And we want people to think of this as part of their community. We want people to come and enjoy themselves. And so we're hopeful that there's more entries, that people say, add a trail, come directly into our neighborhood, because we want bicycle and pedestrian access to your project. We want to be able to come there and walk there. We mentioned earlier, we have food truck rodeos. We have a lot of public events that have been going on. We've only really been using social media because we don't really know the outcome yet, so we're learning a lot. We spend a lot of time trying to understand what the events will be like and how many people will come. We should just go all the way up and loop back around, but have them pull into the hangar. You know, the way we turn right where the actresses used to come in? Yep. That turn, hopefully it's still open. So one of the events that we've been real successful in is food truck rodeos, which we put on a free concert. We have 15 to 20 food trucks. It's a great event. They usually are on Friday nights. We've had our last for the season. It was a little chilly the last time we had one, and you know, we'll be kind of, no, keep going. If you go straight and left and right, that's the easiest way. That's a bit narrow. So the last event was last Friday night. We had the James Montgomery Band. James Montgomery brought the brass section for the Rolling Stones and the bass guitarist from Aerosmith, and had a great time. About 5,000 people were there. It was a lot of fun. And we think that's important. This is a master plan community. One of the benefits of living here is events. And we plan to keep having events. Columbus Day weekend, the 9th, is it 9th, 10th, and 11th? I was just sitting in a meeting, not participating because events are outside of my realm of expertise, but we have a pretty exciting Columbus Day weekend. So if you haven't connected to our social media at Southfield, please do, because there's a series, 3 nights, 2 full days and 3 full nights worth of events coming up for Columbus Day, an Oktoberfest and a fall festival that we'll be hosting here in multiple venues. So we invite you back for that as well. We're going to drive back up because our little segment of Parkway is not yet finished. We have a public meeting October 7th. Once that public meeting occurs, we're going to break ground on the completion of the Parkway, which will take you directly from the commuter rail station where we were all the way out to where the Parkway ends today. So we'll drive to where the Parkway ends today, so you can see today it's about 2 miles worth of driving. When we finish it, it's an extra 3/4 of a mile, and it'll be a direct connection between Route 18 and 228. So if you're in Weymouth, I hear some of the chamber folks, maybe you will use it as a cut through for meetings, but we would welcome that. We do want people cutting through, using that road. It's an important, we think, regional connection to help people on Route 18 who want to get to Route 3 and pick a different path, particularly as they start the widening of Route 18. So we'll really be promoting people either using the commuter rail who are on the east side and find it hard to get to that commuter rail station, or who are on Route 18 and just want to get out to Home Depot or something on 228. So this, we're just retracing our steps because that particular piece of roadway doesn't exist. As Peter mentioned, stealing our thunder, one of the most exciting things we do is we have had the good fortune of a movie set. We came to realize as the next stop, and if everybody would like to, and I'm not running out of time, we can hop out and see the hangar. One of the great benefits of L-Star and Kyle and his team is we were in the hangar one day, and it was, if you've been here, not today, but sometime over the last few years, it was pretty run down. It had been allowed to get into disrepair. We have 2,600 windows. Some 60% of them were broken. It was in tough shape, but when we opened the doors and walked in it, probably before L-Star even owned the property, we didn't know what we'd do. We didn't know how to use it, but we decided it was such an amazing space we should try. And so we're going to get a chance to get off and walk in it. Hopefully you feel the same way. As soon as we made that decision, we started making plans for renovation and restoration. And within a week, a site locating team came by and said there's a movie. We won't tell you the name of it. Code. Yeah, actually, just try down Houghton. That's a great idea. Stefan's part of our team. He's here for all great ideas. So when I turn around and then say something smart, that's because he whispered it in my ear. So we're approaching the hangar from this direction. They said the code name for the film was Flapjack. Hopefully you all know by now. We spent about 3 months with the set of Ghostbusters on site. They did most of their Times Square climactic scene here in the hangar and out on the runway. We have a commercial that has rented the space for a European company. We have 3 more movies that are interested. We didn't know this, but this is the largest soundstage east of LA. And so we have the opportunity here to really do something pretty exciting. Like many of the things, so anyone who has kids or dogs, feel free, come on over, park. That's a fully ADA accessible play structure. We want everyone to come and feel welcome. These buildings will be torn down, so this really becomes a much more usable and interactive space. When that building comes down, we'll have horseshoes and bocce courts. When the chapel comes down, we'll have beach volleyball. The chapel we tried to save, we couldn't. The steeple is going to a church. The pews have been taken out, and people who had a special connection to the base have come and taken them. People maybe got married here or had a special event in their life, and we've been able to save the beams inside of the chapel, and we're going to reuse them as a shade structure in the future. So doing as much as we can to preserve it, but we couldn't preserve the structure. This is the hangar. So we've spent $500,000 just refurbishing it. We really are not 100% sure what its use will be in the future. We're still doing some cleanup. So we could, if you want, we could hop off and you can see the inside, or we don't have enough time? You think it'd be a lot for everyone to get off and back on? All right, I'm sorry. We could do, well, at least you can see it, so we'll turn around so everybody can see both sides. So it's an amazing structure. We have a lot of plans for it. We'll do movies. If the movies ever become something where they don't come to Massachusetts as often as they do, we can find a new use for it. It's part of the centerpiece of our master plan. So we're re-envisioning the master plan to have the hangar here could serve as a public space, a great indoor-outdoor space. We could have many public events. The doors open wide, so all of the door space that is the doors on both sides can be fully retracted and opened. So we're hopeful to in the future have, concerts, other kind of farmers markets, indoor soccer. We've been in discussions with the towns they say there's a desperate need for indoor facilities. So we'll probably finish it and do basketball courts or some other function for the town's use this winter. So the kids have another place to go, as well as the 2 basketball courts in the Shea Gym. So this is our town center. On the opposite side of the town hall, of the hangar, we plan to have a town common, 2.5 acre public space that'll be directly related to the hangar. From the town center, from the town common, there'll be a main street. And so we understand there's a main street in Weymouth. We'll name it something else, but we want you to visualize 4 to 6 story buildings with ground floor retail. We already have apartment developers, condo developers, 3 restaurants, Boston-based restaurants interested in relocating here. That'll feed down on a diagonal roadway that leads to a roundabout that will form the center of our town center. At that roundabout, we'll have a sports stadium, 10,000 seat sports stadium that will do men's pro lacrosse, women's pro soccer, as well as be, we hope, the center for some of the local activities. So maybe there's tournaments, maybe there's Thanksgiving Day football games and people want to play in the stadium. So at 10,000 seats, it feels pretty exciting, but it's not so big that it's always empty. So in along here is our second request to the town of Weymouth. This is where the former developer thought it would be appropriate to put single-family homes. Again, this is our street hockey rink. Please feel free to come out and play street hockey. We're hoping to figure out with Weymouth Youth Hockey how to maybe freeze it this winter. So if you figure out how to make that happen, there'll be some frozen south field happening. I try to play hockey. My nephews say we skate very slow. It's not actually hockey, but I'd love to be out there playing ice hockey. So as you look around, this is what we call the Discovery District. We don't think this is single family homes. We think this could be the largest, most efficient commercial space in Massachusetts. This is flat, impervious, really fast zoning approval. It's 100 contiguous acres. So there's a lot of excitement. We're in negotiations with 5 major corporate tenants, all brought to us through the governor's office, through Mass Econ. They're looking for anywhere from 20 to 50 acres for, a 500,000 square foot corporate facilities. And because we have 100 acres, that's all flat, all accessible, right off a highway, with all the utilities taken care of, it's really one of the most competitive sites in Massachusetts. And so as we drive in this direction, this is perfect for commercial development. The Navy's done 3 really amazing things. There is no change in grade. Everything's dead flat. Everything's impervious. There are no wetlands. There are no natural habitats. Everything is gone. Out in this direction at the roundabout, quick glimpse of it, about 100 feet from there, is Union Street in Rockland. At some point in time, they may ask us to open it, and if they ask us to open it, we'd be happy to do it. In this direction, if we were to keep going, but I know we're sensitive to time, that takes you all the way out to Reservoir Park Drive in 228. Part of the roadway improvements are to widen that whole section all the way to exit 14, and that allows up to 40,000 cars a day to drive on this road. It's our expectation with 40,000 cars a day that the stadium will function, the main street will function. We have outlet mall developers who would love to do an outlet mall here. We have hotel developers who would love to put a hotel at the edge of the corporate campus, the Discovery District. And we're hopeful that some of these commercial campuses come through. The challenge we have is that we're competing nationally and internationally. And so if you have 5 or 6 or 8, you don't know where they'll go. There's challenges here. So what we've offered to the first high credit brand name corporate campus is we'll give them the first 10 acres for free. And so that has drawn a fair amount of interest. And certainly if you have anyone that's interested, we're certainly interested in finding that first user to come here. At the discussion yesterday with the chamber, talking about life sciences and how to repeat Kendall Square, it was interesting. Someone from MassBio was talking about how they like to be in clusters. And obviously MIT is a big benefit. We're never relocating them here, but if we can find one or two, or have the participation of the hospital and Serrano and the other, then we could start to form a cluster. And there are other places in the state. Devens is one. There's some up in Burlington. There are some others. They don't have MIT, but they found some way to get the first and the second. And once you have 2 or 3, then you can form a cluster. Then it's a great place to go. And so that's the goal, is for us to find how to get that first one. That's why we think sponsoring that kind of low land basis might help us start.
Mumford and North. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. Thank you. Hello. Thanks so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Hello, how are you?
I received a phone call one afternoon from the Emery family, and they said, we'd like you to come and consider a first right of refusal to our estate. I said, where is that? I had lived in the town 30 years and had never seen this. So Jim Clark, our town planner, and I came up, and there were plans. They had a table in here, and there were plans out on a table, and they were telling us that this just might go to these developers, but we would like to give the town the first right of refusal. Well, when I came in the front door, I said, geez, this looks like some building I know. And I came through the yard, and I went, oh, good Lord. And I was thinking to myself, they're going to want $4-6 million for this. Well, they offered the place, actually they offered it for $2 million. And when we went to CPC, they said try to get it for 1.8, which we did. And my thought is, keep in mind, Weymouth is 97% built out. So we have very little open space left. And I knew at the time that we did not have the money to renovate the place. We went to CPC, and we were able to bond through community preservation, which I believe is really what that's for. So Weymouth will have this in its future, and I really believe that it was a good thing. Now I'll read my speech. The Emery Hill Estate, it spans 24 acres atop what we refer to as King Oak Hill, and that's really the historic part. In East Weymouth, the main house was built between 1903 and 1904 for a gentleman named William Binion, Esquire. Binion made his fortune in Weymouth's lumber industry and was inspired to model his home after George Washington's Mount Vernon mansion. In 1916, Binion sold the property to Allen C. Emery, who was a prominent wool merchant. I didn't know we had any wool in Weymouth. Must have been lots of sheep. Emery and his descendants lived on this property for nearly 100 years. His son, Allen Emery Jr., resided here until his death in 2011, and that's when we got the call. He was 91 years old. To the Emery family, this estate has never just been a home. It really has been much more to them. And I can tell you, as I told a few others earlier, that Billy Graham used to come here in the summer. Mr. Emery was quite a religious man, and he used to have Boy Scouts come up in choirs, and they used to sing, and it was all a very religious experience. It was a sanctuary. Not only the rooms were occupied, but the land was farmed. It was a huge farm. And I'm not quite sure if anybody remembers why those trees, they planted them in twos. And it's really kind of decorative. And they had a farm going right by the trees over there. I'm not quite sure of the two-tree issue. When Mr. Emery passed, the family made the decision to sell the property, and their goal was to ensure that this property stayed within the town. I believe that this historic homestead is worth protecting. And the views alone are extraordinary. As you can see, when those trees are down, you can see all of Boston. It's just amazing. On clear days, you can see the entire Boston skyline. And before the buildup of Boston, it was reported that you could see as far as Gloucester, beyond Boston. That's shoreline, and that's about 40 miles out. If the developers had an opportunity to purchase the land, I have no doubt. If those developers had purchased it, I really have no doubt we would be sitting right here in some condominium. So I'm glad that didn't happen. The trees would have been cut down, and the breathtaking views, I'm sure, would have been reserved only for a lucky few. I took one look at the property and knew we couldn't let this happen. In 2011, we purchased Emery Estate with $1.9 million of community preservation funds. This land is now protected open space to be enjoyed by the people of Weymouth and whoever. Anyone can come and enjoy it. It is public property. I firmly believe that this was a worthwhile investment, and in time we will see multiple uses of this estate. Can't you just see it? I mean, it really has great potential. In less than 7 years, Weymouth will celebrate its 400th anniversary as a township. It's going to go Plymouth, Weymouth, and then up to Quincy and Braintree, and we're all going to have a really good time. I ask you to imagine what it would be like to see this property restored by that time and made an integral part of our civic center. From the epicenter of the local government, residents could walk to the wealth of public spaces, the Ralph Talbot Amphitheater that's right beside Town Hall. Town Hall is a replica of the old State House, lovely piece of property. The Veterans War Memorial, the shops, restaurants in Jackson Square, our town's new state-of-the-art recreation facility, Legion Memorial Field, which I think you rode by, and Weymouth's very own Castle on the Hill. This is one part of my vision for the future of our community, a vibrant town center. We can bring all this together. As Weymouth's unique, it does not have a downtown. We have villages, 4 villages. At this time, I'll turn things over to Kathy Torrey, our school hall rental facilitator and a member of the Emery Estate Advisory Committee. They work very hard. She's going to provide you with some additional history on the Emery Estate and share a few intimate details about the grounds and buildings. And when she's finished, I invite you all to sit again, have some refreshments, and just walk around. Kathy?
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming to Weymouth today. I'm just going to say something. I call Weymouth the middle child of the South Shore because we're stuck between Plymouth and Boston. And as Mayor indicated, we are the second oldest town in the Commonwealth, but often forgotten about. People just sort of pass through. In addition to being with on the committee, I also am part of the Abigail Adams Historical Society, and we have her home just down the road that we've worked with the CPC to preserve and restore to its present state right now. So the CPC funds, I just want to say, have been integral to Weymouth and allowing us to do some things that we would not have been able to do were it not for those local and state funding. But just a little bit, Dr. Emery lived here. His family purchased it in 1916, and from there they raised their family here. I think some of the significant things about Dr. Emery are that he grew up in Weymouth, graduated from Weymouth schools, and from there went on to serve in the military in World War II. He joined the Coast Guard after Pearl Harbor, and then on to college. But his family made their wealth with the woolen industry in Boston. Interesting, going back and tying it to Abigail. Abigail's father was a sheep farmer, so raising sheep and wool in Weymouth has a long history. But at a young age, Dr. Emery decided he needed something more in his life and became a devout Christian man. And that led everything that he did in his life. In that home like this, he made it very available and accessible to the people of Weymouth. One of the things that we did as the advisory committee is that we held a number of open meetings to hear what people had to say about the house, what people wanted us to do with the property. And a lot of people came forward and said, oh, I remember coming here for Bible study, for music, for just entertainment. So I like to have that, keep that vision in mind, that that's where we're going with this property and with the home. Mayor said we do need funds for restoration, and that will come at a later date. But I found that Dr. Emery wrote a book called A Turtle on a Fence Post. And I haven't seen a copy of the book, but the gist of it is that a turtle isn't able to crawl up the fence post. Somebody has to put him there. So we're put into different situations, and what are we going to do with those situations? So, Weymouth has been put into this situation of acquiring this home and this property. And now we have a responsibility to be those stewards and to maintain and grow this property. And as I was saying to Eric Dykeman, can't you just see having this being a centerpiece for the South Shore and the Boston area? So I leave you, our business people and our thinkers and doers of the area with that in mind.
Thank you so much for coming, everyone. Make sure you take a cookie. It has our seal on it.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. My name is Tara Brooke Watkins. I'm the theater producer at Eastern Nazarene College, just down the street in Wollaston and Quincy. We are so pleased to be here today to present the title song from a hopefully famous musical, Oklahoma, in case we're not sure what's happening here. We are presenting this show October 15th through the 24th on the weekends. We would love to see you all for the full performance. So this is just a little taste of our theater department at Eastern Nazarene College. Please enjoy our performance.
They couldn't pick a better time to start in life.
It ain't too early and it ain't too late.
Starting as a father with a brand new life.
Soon be living in a brand new state. Brand new state. Gonna treat you great. Gonna give you barley, carrots and potatoes. Pasture for the cattle. Spinach and tomatoes.
Flowers on the prairie where the June bugs zoom.
Plenty of air and plenty of room. Plenty of room to swing a rope.
Plenty of corn and plenty of hope.
Oh, the Homo where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. And the waving wheat can sure smell sweet when the wind comes right behind the rain. Oh, the Homo every night, my honey lemon eye. We sit alone and talk and watch a hawk making lazy circles in the sky. We know we belong to the land, and the land we belong to is grand. And when we say, yeah, we're only saying you're doing fine, Oklahoma, Oklahoma, okay. Oklahoma where the wind comes sweeping down the plain. Oklahoma where the waving wheat can sure smell sweet when the wind comes right behind the rain. Oklahoma every night, my honey lemon eye. Every night we sit alone and talk and watch a hawk making lazy circles in the sky. Go, ho, and the land we belong to is grand. Yippee, 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 and when we say, yow, hi-yi-bi-yo-ee-hey, we're only saying you're doing fine, Oklahoma, Oklahoma, okay. Oklahoma,
performance, but enjoy the rest of your tour today. Again, Eastern Nazarene College. Thanks a lot. Have a great day, everybody.
We have with us the 6th President of the United States of America. Please rise for Mr. President John Quincy Adams.
It is a great pleasure to be here. Yes, please be seated. It is, as I say, a great pleasure to be here, meeting my constituents and, of course, citizens of Quincy. I think you have come to know something of my history, but I am surprised that people know so very little of the poetry that I wrote. I wrote a hymn called The Hourglass. I'm sure that you know that an hourglass is a device that measures the passage of time by the passage of sand through a very, very narrow opening into a volume below. The old-time minister would often turn the hourglass at a certain point in his sermon, and you knew that you were in for at least another hour of sermonizing. Well, I will take nothing of that time with you. I said it is a pleasure to be among my constituents, and it would seem that a visitor to these United States today would think that our major occupation was campaigning for office. And I seek no office whatsoever. I have held all the many offices that were thrust upon me. In fact, for a man to appear to seek an office would pretty well demonstrate that he was not fit to occupy it. The office should seek the man. The man should not seek the office. So, a poem, The Hourglass. I will remain for some short while later to respond to any questions that you might have for me individually. So let me see. That seems better. The hourglass. Alas, how swift the moments fly, how flash the years along, scarce here, yet then already by the burden of a song. See childhood, youth, and manhood pass, an age with furrowed brow. Time was, time shall be, drain the glass. But where in time is now? Time is the measure but of change. No present hour is found. The past, the future fill the range of time's unceasing round. Where then is now? In realms above, with God's atoning Lamb, in regions of eternal love, where sits enthroned I am. Then, pilgrim, let thy joys and tears on time no longer lean, but henceforth all thy hopes and fears from earth's affections wean. To God let votive accents rise, with truth, with virtue live, so all the bliss that time denies, eternity shall give. I wrote that in September of 1839. It was transposed into a hymn, and I have heard it sung within these walls many times, and seldom have been able to understand the words being sung. For that reason, you now have heard it sans music. That will conclude my remarks for the moment. I will be pleased to remain and turn the occasion back over to this fine lady here.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Society. They have been bringing music to the South Shore and to the world since 1981. They're coming off successful recent performances at both Carnegie Hall and the John F. Kennedy Performing Arts Center in Washington, D.C. If you could all please rise for the singing of the Star-Spangled Banner.
Was so proud.
They are currently working on their event schedule for the season. For more information, Chief Commercial here, discoverquincy.com will have all of those details for you. Our next speaker is a strong supporter of the arts, and while many of you may know him, you may not know that he was a founder of the Quincy Arts Fest. We do have the Quincy Art Association, president in the back as well, Karen Giovanello, and they've put on an arts display for you at the conclusion of our speaking portion of the day. And the Arts Fest just moved this year to Adams Field. With that, the Honorable Mayor of the City of Quincy and my friend, Thomas Cook.
Thank you, Council. My colleague represents the board. One of our city does an incredible job, but an even more amazing job is setting up our Discover Quincy and tourism effort. So thank you, Margaret, for all you do for our city. So you want to acknowledge the good representative, my rep from Mount Quincy, Bruce Ayers. Good to see you, Bruce. I see the superintendent of the Park Service here with us, Marion Peak. How blessed we are as a city to have the presence of the Park Service here with us to preserve our obviously preserve our history, but also part of the cultural experience of our city as well. So thank you, Marianne, for what you do. Again, thank you for the opportunity. We're in the some called Stone Temple, known as the Church of the Presidents. I don't know if any of you know, this church was built in 1828. The architect was a South Shore guy by the name of Alexander Paris, who also is the architect for Quincy Market. And directly across the street is the 1844 Town Hall. I think it was the third building for Town Hall in Quincy, built of all Quincy granite, as is this building. And the architect for that building was Solomon Willard, who really was the grandfather, if you will, of the granite industry in West Quincy, developing the first granite railway, commercial railway, to get the granite down to the ships, which brought it over to build the Bunker Hill Monument in Charlestown. So Quincy granite was sent all across the world because of its beauty and hardness. So we're proud of our granite industry. But here we have two iconic buildings across the street from each other. And over the years, this building has really become a traffic rotary, unfortunately. So we're in the midst of planning and execution of a major new Hancock Adams Green, which will be known as. The traffic will no longer go between the church and City Hall. It's going to be rerouted around these buildings. The traffic won't be any better, it won't be any worse. The engineers tell me. We're going to find that out. But it's been a major project and been thought about for some time. And as part of the park, there'll be water features, fountains, and there's two magnificent statues that are being built as we speak. They're in their clay version. We had a national call for artists a couple of years ago. We had 78 people respond from all over the country because we're doing a statue of John Adams and John Hancock, and both obviously very exciting characters in the development of this nation. So, a little shop in Italy. The gentleman is doing great work. We get images periodically. If I didn't have an election in a few weeks, I'd be over there visiting. But that may not go over too well at this time, but we expect them, the clay, to come back, the clay models, and then they'll be fabricated in the foundry here in this country. So those will be two major pieces as part of the new park setting. There'll also be a great civic space and cultural space. We will be able to enjoy beautiful concerts and all type of activity out here in a space that will be safe from getting hit by a car or a truck coming through here. So we're very excited about that prospect. Across the street, next to the City Hall, is the old burial ground of our city. It goes back to about 1640. Reverend Hancock's buried there. It's the father of John Hancock. He was the pastor at this parish at one time. But we're in the midst of a roughly $400,000 rehabilitation. The fence work, the wall work, going to be removing the chain link in the back and putting in the wrought iron fence. So we're really spending some time on our historical assets, if you will, which are also cultural assets in a real way. The City Hall we expect to be completed within a month or so, and it's going to be magnificent. The second floor of that building, which had been carved up, is going to go back to its original dimension. It was once the Great Hall, the town meeting. It will go back as the Great Hall. to its full size, where the city council will meet, and we'll have a number of public meetings space in that building. We're also carving out a section on the first floor for historical exhibit space. The city has an awful lot of wonderful historical artifacts that are in boxes that are tucked away that can't be enjoyed. So we anticipate not to do the same as the Adams Mansion, do the same as the Historical Society, but actually do a little different approach in telling a history of our city, perhaps a little bit more of the political history of the city as part of that exhibit. So we're very excited about all that's going on here. And all of this is part of major economic redevelopment of our entire Quincy Center. When we go back and look at the rollout of the Quincy Center project and all the public meetings we did, charrettes that were done, there was a great call by the public and developers for good civic cultural space in the community. So we view this as going to be a real centerpiece, if you will, of all of that activity. As we rebuild the downtown, and the downtown becomes once again the heart of the city, the center of commerce, but also the heart of the city where great civic activities happen, great cultural activities happen. It brings the entire community together, and we're looking forward to that, of course. And you may have seen down the street, we're seeing the first building rise out of behind the bank building on the corner. Another iconic building, by the way, 1928 Art Deco, magnificent building. This corridor, by the way, was written up years ago in one of the state historic books about the incredible assets here. You look at City Hall, you look at this beautiful temple, the Art Deco building. Just behind us is one of the Richardson's great works, one of his top, I think it's number 9 in his top 10 works for libraries in this country. Just a stone's throw from here. We just finished rehabilitating the old Coddington Elementary School, built in 1908, magnificent granite brick building. Now houses a school department, a playing department, magnificent Bethany Congregation Church, English Gothic, just down the street. So we've got some incredible architectural assets that really plug beautifully into our historic preservation and the cultural activities that we'll continue to see in our city. So they all intertwine and certainly do in this city. So we're excited about where we're at, we're excited about where we're going, and we recognize the value in the arts. We just, we heard the beautiful Quincy Choral Society. How fortunate we are in Quincy to have the Quincy Choral Society, to have the Quincy Symphony Orchestra, to have the Quincy Art Association, Karen's in the back. Wonderful organizations. People work so hard to share their gifts and talents, but they add tremendously to the culture of this great city. And that's what I think one of the attractiveness of living here and doing business here. So I hope you're enjoying your tour. I wish you well for the rest of the day. Thanks for having me.
Typically, you start your day with your host, but when you have a president of the United States, you put things out of order. It is now an honor to introduce the newly ordained Reverend of the United First Parish Church, or not newly ordained to his parish, Reverend Rebecca Froome.
Welcome. I am going to give you a very brief snapshot of our founding and our present, and then invite Gary Haynes, Director of our History and Visitor Program, to speak also very briefly about the Adams Crypt and the tours we do here. So we were founded in 1639 when 8 men of the Puritan order got together and wrote and signed a covenant that they entered into by their own authority, their own free will, and this was pretty radical for 1639. The founding of this church allowed the town of Braintree to be formed in 1640. That's how things worked back at the time. The church was formed, then the town. And so I think of this founding covenant as having this democratic impulse that over the decades and the centuries leads to really the development of our country in the secular side, and in the faith side, we're now a Unitarian Universalist faith tradition that welcomes people from all faith backgrounds, all different beliefs, and we read a revised covenant every Sunday during our worship service at 10:30 on Sundays. And this impulse you just see it all throughout the city and our history, and now it's expanded beyond those 8 landowning white men to really reflect the diversity that we have in our country and in our community. In addition to being an active church with Sunday morning services that expand religious education, we also do host cultural events, either folks renting our space or some things that we put on ourselves. So from classical concerts in this space to ska concerts in the basement to we have a coffee house series for folk artists called Stone Temple Coffee House that has periodic concerts, including one coming up on October 24th. And we have flyers about that concert on the information table in the next room. So, okay. Gary?
And Gary Haynes is the director of the visitation program. I think we maybe have alluded but have not said that we are home to the burial location of 2 United States presidents and first ladies. And Gary and a group of volunteers, including Mr. Jim Cook, who's portraying our presidents today, lead a terrific program. So after Gary concludes, we are going to have an opportunity to get you down into the crypt, into the art display, and if time allows, we do have some information. You can cross the street to the Hancock Cemetery. So with that, just for some information on the Active Crypt and the Visitor Program, Mr. Gary Haynes.
Let me welcome you again to the Church of the Presidents. We actually provide tours 7 days a week, starting April 19th, our Patriots Day, through Veterans Day, November the 11th. And this year, we have provided over 6,000 visitors tours from, I like to, very appreciative to say, from all 50 states, Washington, D.C., Puerto Rico, and 31 foreign countries. Now, last year, we had visitors from 37, so we're not quite up there from last year, but it's quite amazing managing this program. The visitors, not from the United States, but from all over the world, from all 4 corners of this earth, from Asia, West Africa, Europe, Middle East, the knowledge they have about John and Abigail Adams, and they're so moved when they can actually visit the tombs of John and Abigail, and also John Quincy and his wife Louisa Catherine. And I would have to say probably 90% of our visitors have read David McCullough's book. So there's something to be said about David McCullough's biography of John Adams. But a few of the things that we always love to highlight when they come here, because we are part of the Adams legacy. Obviously, visitors go to the birthplaces, Peacefield, and this really completes the story. And I think when they walk into this beautiful sanctuary that was dedicated in November of 1828 is our dome ceiling that the architect Alexander Parrish provided us. It's all plaster, and the church actually had it restored in 2001. And then we love to point out the memorial tablets to John and Abigail, John Quincy and Louisa Catherine Adams that was erected by their sons. And then we also have a memorial tablet to our city's namesake, Colonel John Quincy, over this direction. And I think it's always interesting. So many of our visitors think our city's named in honor of the 6th president. Until we correct them. We said, nope, it's actually named in honor of Abigail's grandfather. And of course, that's our 6th president's namesake. Colonel John Quincy was Abigail's maternal grandfather. Her mother was a Quincy. And then, of course, we get into the genealogy. Well, how the Adams and the Quincy's are related. But of course, we love to address those questions. And yes, we still have a president's pew, pew number 54. That was actually John Quincy's Adams pew. He purchased it in 1828, and I have to say, it is probably the most photographed pew in the city of Quincy. I've become an expert in taking pictures of families wanting their picture taken in our very famous pew. And yes, of course, everyone gets to tour the tombs of our 2 presidents and 2 first ladies, and I might add, this is the only church in the United States where there's actually 2 presidents and 2 first ladies entombed inside an active church. And then people are very moved by the fact that they can actually go in. I wish I could take pictures of looking at the expressions of visitors when they actually realize they can go in the tomb, place their hands on the tombs. For many of these visitors, people that they're so proud of and have read so much about, especially Abigail. And then I have to tell you also, I've been pushed a lot also, because obviously when we talk about the crypt, we kind of stand in front of the door, and a lot of people have no idea that they can go in. So I kind of have a sore shoulder here once in a while. But anyway, we welcome you to tour the tombs. Obviously, we will have tour guides stationed to address any of your questions. And once again, welcome to Quincy. Thank you.
Just by show of hands, how many of you have been in the Church of the Presidents before today? Good mix. How many of you have taken the trolley tour of the Adams National Historical Park? Okay, I'm going to tell you something. Quincy is the best bargain in Boston. They did just have a rate increase, but for $10 for an adult, children are free. $20, your family of 4 can tour the birthplaces and summer White House of 2 United States presidents, as well as the Stone Library. We do have a very small display. We didn't have time today to bring you to the Adams properties. We do have a small display in the rear room, as well as an art display from the Quincy Art Association, a very small exhibit from their successful Arts Fest this past weekend. So in the back room here, and then we have sushi provided by JP Fuji Group. Quincy is also a very rich cultural dining destination. We wanted to showcase that to you. So this is the conclusion of our speaking program. Please join us. You can access the crypts through either if you want to go to that first. And anyone who would like to join me in a few minutes, do we have Rick? Okay. We do have the tours of the Hancock Cemetery. So I think when we're ready to get on the bus, what we'll do is have Rick give us a very speaking program at the cemetery. So we'll let you know when to do that. So whichever way you'd like to go first, if you want to do the tombs, it's pretty tight quarters down there, or join us in the art room. Thank you so much.
With the occasion of the building of this church, John Quincy Adams thought that he would like to provide in the church a more appropriate burial place for his parents where people could pay respects. So he got a deed of this space to be built into the basement of the church where they would be interred. And so this tomb actually is coterminous with the building of the church. And when John Quincy and his wife died, several years later, obviously, their son, Charles Francis, got permission to extend the tomb and bury them in here. So they're both buried in here, and in a minute I'll let you in if you want to go in single file. And you'll see on each tomb the flag that was in effect at the date of their presidencies. 15 stars, 15 stripes for John Adams. The original theory was to add not only a star, but a stripe to the flag. But by the time they got to John Quincy Adams with 24 stars, they realized it would be too cumbersome to add extra stripes. So they went back to 13 in honor of the 13 colonies. You can take any pictures you want in there. Some people have told me that if you take it without the flash, the engraving of the names shows up in it. So please go and watch your heads, it's very low. Particularly at the end.
Sorry.
No problem. I believe this is the only presidential tomb that you can actually open.
Originally, what's now Quincy was the North Parish of Braintree. And Braintree Township was one of the early centers of Puritan settlement here in Massachusetts Bay. So it's basically being settled starting in 1630. And the first meeting house was over to the right of where the granite church is. It burned down, it was replaced, so John and Abigail Adams actually went to the second meeting house. But this land was originally pasture, common land, and they probably started burying people here by 1650. But the early Puritans often did not put up headstones because they thought it was a vanity. So there's many more people buried here than there are stones. And it continued to be used for pasture up until about 1809, when John Adams and other citizens of what was now Quincy had the land enclosed, cleared the title on it, and had it consecrated as a cemetery. So the earliest stone we have here is 1666, and it belonged to an early president of Harvard, Thompson, and it's this little tiny one right there. So you can see how simple the artwork and all starts out. Now, when they do start using stones, they use very soft stones, because the first people doing the carvings are wood carvers and woodworkers, and probably using, those types of tools. So you got slate and sandstone, sometimes limestone. But the interesting thing is Quincy's got granite. So they actually had to import a lot of the slate. And since this was a maritime economy right from the beginning, we've got slate from some pretty far places. You see the purplish stone over there? That's Welsh slate from Wales. Probably came over as ballast in a sailing ship. And as they go along and the granite quarries start to become developed, they start getting real stone workers, real stone carvers and all. And the art just explodes. What's interesting about it is you have in the art a religious history of Christianity, some paganism, and a lot of the symbols, the iconography, is not just Christian. So if you look over here, we have some late 17th century stones. I'll kneel down here so you can see. But you see these spirals? Those are coffin worms. And they come from the Middle Ages. If you look in the cathedrals in England and so on, you'll see those coming out of people's dresses and whatnot. Well, over time, those evolve into foliage, as here. This one's pretty faint. And eventually, they become a rose, which is a Christian symbol of grace. Now, the long bones, the crossbones, the hourglass, those are, of course, memento mori, symbols of death, just to drive the point home that we're all going to end up here. The winged skulls, very weird. Those start out as cherubs in the Renaissance period, and the Puritans take them and they become both a memento mori and a symbol of the soul leaving the body. And they vary a lot. in this cemetery, you have some where you have a portrait head with or without wings, and it's an actual depiction of the person buried there. And you get skulls that are sometimes very stylized and sometimes extremely realistic. There's a couple over in that section where the flesh is rotting off the skull. You know, well, you know, a little bit of overkill, I guess. But what is really interesting, and this is very new research, just coming out of England in the last year. You see what looks like a flower here in a circle? Okay, that's done with a compass. And I always thought that it was the coffin worm on the way to becoming a flower, but it's much older. It goes back to the early, 1200, 1300, when they're building the cathedrals. That's the Christian equivalent of an American Indian dream catcher, according to the new theory. It's supposed, but it doesn't catch dreams. It confuses evil spirits. Yeah. So, anyways, that's really interesting. But as the stone carvers get better, they start using harder materials, and they start making the stones into things. So right over here is a marble pulpit with a Bible on it, and you'll see sometimes, well, particularly at Wollaston Cemetery, actual statues of people or animals, so on, lambs particularly, often marking a child's grave, but also a Christian symbol. And they move away from the memento mori, so you get some political symbols on stones, you get flowers and trees that have meaning. So if you see a weeping willow or a yew tree or something like that, that's a symbol of grief and loss. And sometimes they get kind of tricky in biblical allusions. You see there's a round stone over there. It's actually, it looks like the base of a column. Well, that's what it is. The column symbolizes the support of life, and that one's broken off near the ground because that's a child's grave. Yeah, they didn't have much support for very long.
We have a theater rehearsal going on inside, an acting class, getting ready for our fall musical production of Footloose. And so if anybody who would like to kind of see that and just see the rehearsal going on, if you'd like to just come into the theater quietly and just take a seat in the front section where you're comfortable, and then the director will just say a few words and explain what's going on. And then we can watch and enjoy it for 10 minutes or so, and then we can come back out again. That sound good?
Sounds good.
All right, let's do that then.
The students are, the idea of the exercise is that one person is sitting on a park bench and someone else comes upon them and has a launching sentence to say. So someone might come upon them and say, "What do you need from me?" Or, "I didn't expect to find you here." And then the students need to listen to each other and respond to each other, creating a character and a setting. So
I can't go back. Maybe we should just forget that. Sit right down. Sit back down. I'm absolutely not. Sit down. We're going to talk. A few years ago, I was coming back from a party. I was driving. I shouldn't have been driving. I was driving home. And the person was crossing the street. I didn't see them cross the street. They were crossing. I shouldn't have been drinking that night, and then I knew I shouldn't have gotten in the car. They all said to just leave the keys. How long ago was this? A few months. A few months ago? After the last incident? Then you gonna pull this for me again? So that's really what you want, huh? You're gonna spend all this time hurting yourself and lying to other people and hurting your family and hurting your friends and the people who care about you just to waste your time? And then you go out and kill somebody? That's what you really care about, huh? This isn't easy for me to tell you. Yeah, I know it's not. You think it's easy for me to sit here and try to help you? Trust me, I've tried. I've worked so hard. I give you so much of my time. I had relationships to help you. I have always been the only person here that wanted to take care of you, no matter what. No matter when everybody else gave up, I was there. And now, this is me coming to you. This is me asking for help. I'm ready to take that help. Ready? Because that's serious trouble. You know, what is the statute of limitations on that? Have you been to court? Do they even know what happened? I just left them. Put me in a tough position. You know, now that I know this, it's a whole other issue. After all the stuff that I've done for you over the years, year after year, nothing's been as big as this. And now I gotta sit here and I gotta make this decision. I gotta think about my best friend, one of the only people I got that I care about, or myself. You get caught on this. What happened to me? I never get to have a family. I can't get a good job. People are gonna look at me differently because I went to jail because of something that you did. Nothing's happening right now. They think they just left the case open. It was a drive-by and nothing else. But last week I tried to visit the family. I walked up to the front door and I saw them in there, the wife, kids. I couldn't bring myself to say it. I don't know how do you tell somebody that you're the reason their life is over? You're the person that took their father away. I don't know what to do. You never have. I don't know if you've ever once told me. Sat there and told me and looked me in the eye and told me that you have a problem. You know, you might listen to me, go on and on about how you're hurting everybody else, how how everybody else feels, but tell me how you feel. You think there's an issue?
I know there's an issue. I just
Look at me. Look at me. I have a problem.
And scene. Perfect. Oh, I wanted that to happen so bad. I wanted to make it work. Good job.
Our town, Sylvanus Thayer was the father of West Point. Who was the mother of West Point, you would ask? He was a bachelor, so he was never married. Gilbert Bean Bond we're going to go into as well. Now, Mr. Bean was a benefactor of the Historical Society, was actually engaged in the placement of the Thayer House to this location, which I think originally was that away. Thayer Academy Field. So Mr. Bean was really a huge contributor, financially and otherwise, to the establishment of the Historical Society. And let me say this about my friend John Dennehy and the Historical Society. We are very proud of our history. This is our 375th anniversary as a community. You know, we think we've got a good path in terms of our future, but we're really incredibly proud and fortunate to have a very significant history in terms of our town and obviously this part of the state. Plymouth, Massachusetts. If you do it just very bluntly, Peter's from Plymouth. They landed in Plymouth in 1620, went up to Boston in 1630, and the Pilgrims this is, and made their way back around this area in 1640. And thus we celebrate our 375th anniversary as a community today. And we're a very strong community. And the Historical Society, we've been able to build a very strong and I think beneficial partnership with the town, particularly over the last few years. We've, with CPA money, have done some of the restoration work on these buildings, and we have some great plans in terms of creating what I think will be a very strong campus atmosphere over the next couple of years as we pour more CPA money, community preservation money, into the preservation of these buildings. That is the old Thayer Library across the way, which was in desperate shape over the last couple of years, again with expenditure of town money mingled with some state grants and some community preservation money. We've restored the exterior, the envelope, if you will, to its proud history. Now we're going to attack the inside, and our goal is to create between the town hall and what is the old town hall. That's, I said Thayer Library. No, the Thayer Library, excuse me. A very welcoming kind of green that will mirror some of what you see on the Veterans Mall here, and I think complement the attachment of these two buildings. That is our goal over the next 2 to 3 years to make that happen. I do want to note, we've opened, I know this is like an arts, kind of cultural, historical, what else is it? Awesome. Yeah. The best. Well, you are the best chamber, and I really mean that. I mean, in terms of the membership, the strength of the membership, the mix, both, some small businesses, some bigger businesses, and just sole proprietors, banking institutions, and others who contribute so much. It's a great chamber, and so we're proud to welcome you here. We have opened this year a community arts center with the support of many folks here. It's up on Route 37. There are some brochures inside. I will acknowledge my wife, full disclosure, is engaged in that. It's a volunteer effort, but it's a great new community arts center. My wife and others, I should say, really came up with an idea. So I would encourage all of you. There's a brochure in there. You can look it up and see for yourself. So we're glad you're here. John, I'm going to give you my microphone. We're on BCAM. We're on BCAM Live. Where's BCAM? Let's all wave to BCAM right now. This is the South Shore Chamber, Braintree Cable Action. And they're great to cover us. They're great to cover us. So I'm going to turn my mic over to John Dennehy. John, I'll give this to you, buddy.
Okie doke.
And John's going to take us on a tour both inside the Thayer House, which is beautiful. And I think we're going to go to the barn as well, correct?
Yes, we actually, because it's a larger group and the house is pretty small, we're going to split the group into two. So we'll have 25 going into the Thayer House with Mr. Weinberg and Miss Burns, and the other group will go with me to the Gilbert Bean, and then after about 20 minutes we'll switch. But I just want to point out, we recently restored this 18th century cannon, which is located to my left and to your right. That was a gift from West Point when shortly after the house was moved from its old location down the street. We're so proud that we were able to restore this 18th century cannon. We had the dedication just a few months ago. But again, the fact that Sylvanus Thayer was the father of West Point, he's the one that brought its tradition of duty, honor, country, brought stability and academic rigor to West Point that's still there today. He was originally buried in Braintree, now he's buried at West Point. But why don't we split you guys up?
I would like to welcome you to the Thayer House. The house was built in 1720 by Sylvanus's great-grandfather, Nathaniel. The house originally was up the street, about a mile up the road on Washington Street. There was a big farm, and eventually, as the mayor had indicated, Gilbert Bean, who was the president of the Historic Society, felt that that this house was worthwhile in preserving. They were going to tear it down. And so the Historical Society decided to transfer the house because Woolworths, which is an old company, manufacturing company, excuse me, bought the land from Gilbert Bean. Now, let me just briefly tell you a little bit about Sylvanus Thayer. He was born here in this house. There were just 4 rooms, which you'll be going through. He was born in 1785, June 9th. He was one of 7 children. He worked on the farm. There was a farm up the street. He did all of the chores that were necessary, from cooking to cleaning to milking cows to gardening. So can you imagine living in here, no electricity, no plumbing, no pharmacy, no real fire department. In this room, which is called the parlor, this was a reception room. Every room has a fireplace. This is where the guests would come in. They would be greeted. They would have tea. And I would like you to look at this. This is called a bowl rather than a cup. You see, there are no handles on this. And it was customary to serve tea. And the way that the ladies used to take the tea is they would pour it into the saucer and they would drink it from the saucer. That would help to cool it. So these are original. The interesting thing about this is, how did they start the fire for the fireplace if there weren't embers? Well, this area is rich in rock because of the glaciers. There was flint. And so they took flint, and which you have in the other room, and they created a spark. They had within the farm a lot of hay or straw, so they could use that, and timber, or kindling wood. So once they started the fire, that would provide the only source of heat. And wood was the chief source at that time. So you can imagine the woods that were here were used in great quantity. There were lots of trees that were cut. Okay, so this is your fireplace. Anyone have an idea what this is? No? A what? It looks like a toaster. No, they used to put embers in here. It's a foot warmer. The embers were in here. When they would go to church, they would take this with them. And because it was so cold and there was no heat, they would just put their feet over that. They'd put their hands over it. Because, as you can imagine, it was pretty darn cold and drafty in these houses. Okay. All right, let's see what else is of interest. This is a windbreak. As you know, they had candles. And this was for when they were reading. They had this windbreak so that the candle would not go out. So that's what this is. This is a very old chair, dates back to the 1700s. late 1700s. The clock dates to the 1700s. And that's all I can tell you. There's more information on this. This is a bed warming pan, as some of you know. Very cold, and the mattresses were made out of straw, out of corn husks, feathers. That was what was available. So that is the bed warmer, which you'll see the bed in the other room. So this is the reception room. They also studied, read books. These are, looks like a Ben Franklin invention because he did do glasses. These were reading glasses, nothing more than magnifying lenses, and they could, adjust the ends. So very rather ingenious. And let's see. There was a paper company in Braintree, and there were mills, but they also had goose feathers that they used. These are quills, as you can see. They've drawn up the ink. There's an inkwell. I don't know if any of you remember. And they had their piece of paper, no envelope. They had wax, melted wax, and they had stamps to seal the paper so they could send it along by horse. Okay, so this looks like a salt shaker, but in fact, it's sand. And when they wrote, they used this over the ink so that it would not run. It was like just to keep it from smearing or smudging, because you can imagine how difficult it was. So there was sand in here. When the ink dried, they would pour the sand back in. So there you are. Here's a candle holder, kind of unique. And as the candle burnt, there you go. How do you get it out? You drop it. Okay, and we make candles in here. There was a school program for 50 years. Gail Burns was in charge of that program. The kids baked bread. They made their own butter, churned their own butter. They learned how to weave and spin, and candle dipping. So those are the things that were done. There's a lot of pewter here. This pewter probably goes back to the 1800s. These were donated. All right, so I wish you had more time. The kids sang songs when they were here, Yankee Doodle. This is the family Bible. It kept all of the records of the family, birth dates, when the person died, when they were married. Now, this is just the box that stores that. And they always kept the Bible at the front of the house, because you can imagine that fires were very common during that day. And they always kept a big kettle with water in every room near the fireplace. So that was very, very important for them. So this was kept in the front so they could just get it out of the house, because those are the family records. Any questions? Okay, well, let's go on to the next room. We go through the vestibule. Remember, this is the parlor where they entertained their guests and wrote and read. All right. This is a combination room. Let me close the door so we don't compete. I'm going to keep record of the time, simply because you'll be going over to the barn. This room has a very unique bed. As you can imagine, 7 children and 4 rooms. My gosh, well, there was more than one bed. There was a bedroom upstairs right above, and there was another bedroom over the parlor. Now, of course, no springs, ropes, corn and feathers, probably a few bugs. So this room, they did mostly kitchen work. They also have, somebody invented this nice device here. This is a mold. Instead of dipping each candle once, they have their wick. They were able to take their candles and their string, pour the wax in, and they would have to go up and down, I don't know, a lot of times in order to get a candle, size of which could be used as a light for their house. Okay, so that's candle rack. I'd like you to notice some of the beams, and these are original to the house, many of them. I can't speak for this main beam, it looks fairly new, but the other beams are original. Those boards are original. So can you imagine in 1720 that these are the original timbers, and 70% of this house was restored, not renovated, was restored. So you can imagine the detail that went into this. When they moved it, they had to take apart each piece, number each piece, reassemble it on this property. A big project. It's on the National Historic Register, just like the first Thayer Public Library. When a suitor was coming, the young lady who he was trying to engage, the woman, if she liked him, he would see his face. He'd walk in and see his face in there. If she didn't like him, she would turn the mirror around. Yeah, so that was something that she did. I think there's a piece of flint in here. Okay, so when they did not have the embers, of course there's the candle that goes in there. Gail Burns would have the children make bread, and this recipe comes from the Thayer family. So that was one thing. And we have a buttery that they found later, and the kids churned cream and made it into butter. That was really unique for them. So they had their bread, their butter, their candles that they dipped, and they learned weaving and spinning because they had to make their own clothes. There was nothing that they could not really do to sustain themselves. They really had tremendous skills, and that was all of the people to survive in these conditions. Why don't you look around first? I'm sorry that I didn't mention that. I wonder if I can get a big flashlight to show you the beehive oven. By the way, that bread, please help yourself to some bread. And I will, this is where the children would come to churn the butter. And of course we have a cheat butter thing, not a power one. I'll just show you quickly. So they put their cream in, buttermilk actually, and you can see that this wheel, they keep on doing it, the cream would rise to the top, and eventually they would remove that, take the liquid was buttermilk, they would drink that, and the butter was then put into a mold. So that was one of the ways that they were doing butter, other than the churn, which we also have in there. They had to make their own clothing, and this grew out in the garden when it dried. It's a nice purple flower. This is called a flax break. What we're doing is we're getting rid of the seeds, breaking up the fibers. This is just the beginning of a many-step process for producing linen that they would spin. There are all kinds of different things. Again, getting it into a finer, you'd actually pull the fibers. Sorry if I'm going too fast. Again, this is softening this, and then they would strip this and get their fiber that they could spin. So, well, this looks like a torture. I've heard of people's spending time on a bed of nails. No, just because of physics. Whoa, I've got to keep my balance here. Why don't I just put this down over this corn? masher. So, again, this is called a comb for berries. And again, you're refining this. So that's what they did. They were lucky. The Indians here were very friendly. They also taught them a lot of things about corn or maize. They had to have meal, not a baseball bat. So they would take their corn, they eat the corn, cobs, well, they'd put the corn in here when it was dry, but for anything they didn't eat, they would turn into flour, mortar and pestle. Okay, so hollowed out trunk log, how do they hollow it out? They put embers on the top. If you've been to Plymouth Plantation, you probably have seen how they do that. There's a beehive oven in here. These things that look like pizza, they're really for taking out the bread. There's several of these. They were very clever. There's somebody that had a foundry. This is, of course, where they cook their soups and their broth. And so this is a very nice fireplace. This was added on from the original house, this keeping room. And the first thing when the students would come in, they're usually third or fourth graders, they would come into this room and there'd be an explanation of what life was like during the colonial era. They would put the wool in here. I'm not very good at this. They would get their fibers and they would put it on the spindle and they would step on the pedal. We had a lot of good weavers here.
Turn into the thread. What's the problem? How do you get it from that?
Well, you
Brush, it twists. It twists on its own through the.
Yeah,
So
it
as you push, it winds on these things. It actually twists on the thread. Incredible.
yeah. This whole thing is 1 yard. So they could measure. This loom is an active loom. The kids actually use it. It's got a shuttle and pedals, and it takes quite a bit of time to learn this. Now, men were weavers, they were spinners, so it wasn't just the woman's duty to do that.
Right now we're going into the Gilbert Bean Museum. This is, the front part of the building is an actual barn that was converted into an administrative building. And inside, we use it for a lot of different things. It's a cultural center. Today we have Flo Markowitz, who's presenting her art. She's a Braintree artist on display. We have John Young of Curtain Call Theater as well. But we also have several talks in here every year. We also have a library downstairs. That's it. See, if you go into the Thayer House, you need to spend at least 2 hours in there. There's so much to see in there. It's really the best example of a salt box anywhere in Massachusetts. It really is. And it's fully furnished. There's a lot of debate as to whether or not a historic property should be furnished or not. Some say keep it bare. Others say no. By putting in furniture, you get a sense, and the visitors get a sense of what it was like to live in the 18th century. So we try to put as much on display as we can, from the kitchen, the operating kitchen. Ask Gail, when you walk into the Thayer House, you're going to smell the bread. It's a special recipe from the Thayer House. We've been serving it for 58 years, 53 years, how long? 55 years, I guess it has been. Okay, well, let me tell you quickly about this building. This is where the administrative offices of the Braintree Historical are located. But more importantly, we have our research library downstairs. Genealogical research. We have a military exhibit, an excellent military exhibit that was put together by James Fahey, who used to be the military archivist for the state. Mr. Fahey lived in Braintree, and sadly he passed away this past year, but Jim did a fantastic job. Anyone who had any question relating to anything military, dating back to the French and Indian War, they would come and speak with Jim. Jim could find answers for you at the drop of a hat. And that's downstairs. That's where our research library is. We're in the process of redoing this building. We're going to be moving the library back upstairs to this main level. Currently, we have an old furniture exhibit. We have a lot of stuff in the Braintree Historical Society, and we're looking for more places to display our stuff. But we are fortunate that we've got a lot of space here. But I want to mention quickly, I know Mayor Sullivan and others have said that John Adams and John Quincy Adams and John Hancock were all born in Braintree. We have their birth certificates across the street. We just dedicated a square at the end of Elm Street to Adams, John Adams, because that is where he delivered the Braintree Instructions, the first voice for freedom, really, the first voice to challenge British Parliament in 1765. They're actually delivered at that spot, at that corner. And that's when Adams, shortly after he was married, they just had their first child, and a very young attorney, John Adams, came and presented these instructions to Braintree Town Meeting. They were later adopted by dozens of towns in the Commonwealth, and later much of the language was adopted by other colonies, and it helped lead to the Stamp Act Congress, which was really the first time the colonies were actually unified to challenge anything. And arguably, the first voice, the first challenge to that authority was right here in Braintree. And just in terms of the location, this was always considered the middle precinct of Braintree. Randolph and Holbrook to the south was the south precinct. Quincy to the north was the north precinct. But again, it was all Braintree until the early 1800s. And there was a reason for that. Braintree really was at the crossroads, just like it is today. Anyone involved with the South Shore Chamber knows that all the three major highways intersect at the South Shore Plaza, right? 93, 128, and Route 3. This is the spot where all the roads branch off. In many ways, it was like that then. To go to Plymouth, to go further south, you would have to come through Braintree. Likewise, heading west. Braintree had more taverns than any other community in the state. And that's because that's where much of the business was done at that time. You didn't have a lot of the public houses that we do today. You would go in a tavern and have a drink and debate the issues of the day. There were 3 of them right near the site of the Braintree Instructions site. So Braintree was always there in the middle, as it is today. So we've been trying over the last several years to reclaim some of that history, to celebrate what we've got, and to remind people, again, that history didn't die with Sylvanus Thayer. That's why we thought it was so important to acquire the Dr. Gallivan House. And talk about local culture. He was involved in a number of different things here in Braintree. We're very proud of him. He sold that house to a dentist in 1965 who continued to operate until he sold it to us. We went inside. Nothing had been touched since the early 60s when Dr. Gallivan sold it. We have the original waiting room, the original leather chairs. The original doctor's office was still there. He delivered a baby in this room, which I cannot imagine how that would. He delivered babies in that room, and he saw probably 300 or 400 patients in any given time in a few months inside that room. But what we're trying to do is celebrate all 3 centuries, 17th, or 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, all along the front there. So when we bring students or tourists in, they can walk into the Sylvanus Thayer birthplace and understand what it was like in the 18th century. When they go into the French house, even though it was built in the 1690s, we celebrate the 19th century because that was the first post office in Braintree. That was really the center of the town for many years. This area was really the center of the town for many years. The French family, the most important families in town, owned that house at the corner. He was a lawyer, conducted a lot of business. One of the most popular taverns was right across the street on property that the Thayer Academy is now located. This was it. This was the center of the town. And we want to celebrate that. The mayor, the CPC, the town of Braintree have been incredibly helpful. They helped us put a roof on the Gallivan House. And what we're trying to do now is within the next couple of years, you'll be able to come back and you walk through that front door, you're going to be stepping back into the 1930s. Franklin Roosevelt, President Roosevelt will be on a loop giving a speech. The furniture, we've already had donations of 1930s era furniture. We were fortunate enough to have the complete doctor's office from the 1930s that we can set up in that exact same spot. They never changed the fixtures, they never changed the tile. I mean, all of this, the old black and white tile from the 1930s, which is coming back now, it's still there in those rooms. So we want to restore that first floor to the way it would have looked in the 1930s, when you actually went to the doctor's house if you needed to see a doctor. He did do house calls, but more often than not, you would come in and go to the doctor's office. You'd have a line of people going out the back door. Again, a reminder that every town, every community has a different history, complex history. It's not just military history or political history, it's medical history. Thomas Watson, who spent most of the later years of his life here in Braintree, a Renaissance man, if you could ever describe one. Invented the telephone with Alexander Graham Bell, came to Braintree, founded the Fore River Engine Company, which now is later the Fore River Shipyard. He started the Braintree Electric Light Department, first one of its kind. When the big blackout occurred 70 years ago, pilots from the air said the only town that was lit up was Braintree. You could see the shape of Braintree because they had their own municipal light company. He was an artist. He was a geologist. We have some of his original paintings in the room next door. We have all of his original letters downstairs in the library. Talk about culture. This man was a genius. We also have an engine that was actually built, a steam engine that was built down at the Fore River Engine Company. There's so much history all around us. What we're trying to do in Braintree is try to collect and save as much of it as possible and put it on display so people can see it and experience it. And they can come to the Society for lectures and art displays and other types of things. As Mayor Sullivan mentioned, the new Community Arts Center just opened up across the street, and they're still determining what use to make of that beautiful brick building across the street, the original Thayer Public Library, which Sylvanus Thayer donated money towards. He paid for half of it, and that encouraged the town to pay the other half. And then he helped build, obviously, Thayer Academy. He gave a huge endowment to Dartmouth College. The Dartmouth School of Engineering, still one of the best in the country, was funded by him. Not to mention the fact he brought a new, as I said, academic rigor to West Point. Just an incredible contribution to our country. Engineering had never been studied in this country. The only place it was studied was at West Point, believe it or not. He had to go to Europe to buy engineering books so that our engineers would be educated here. So the Army Corps of Engineers, that's where it came from. That was Sylvanus Thayer. So I welcome you to get up and walk around just a little bit to see, again, John Young from Curtain Call Theater is here. Terry Stano from the Thayer Public Library has joined us as well. It's all about promoting community, promoting culture, promoting history. And we're very proud of it. We're really glad you were able to come by and visit us for a couple of minutes. But come back. There's a lot to see. And when you come back again, we're going to have that middle house done. It's going to be impressive. So feel free to walk through.